The year was 1808, a year when the waters of the Atlantic brought not only waves, but also a future where nations converged at every corner of Brazil. As ships unloaded their cargo, the streets buzzed with anticipation for the emerging new fashion. The subtle hum of society changed its tone. It was the sound of fabrics unfolding, boxes being opened, of luxury gliding through the hands of eager men and women. Lack of elegance in the tropics? Or was it the sound of modernity? With the arrival of the Portuguese royal family in Brazil in January of 1808, and the consequent opening of the then colony's ports to international trade, suddenly English goods invaded homes, and the somber hues of waistcoats and top hats began to paint the urban landscape. In the then capital, Rio de Janeiro, particularly on Direita and Alfândega streets, men now boasted the cold elegance of blue and black, a contrast with the ever-flaming sky of the Carioca twilight. Even Dom Pedro I, whose beauty was undeniable, adhered to the diversity of the New World, though his image was not carved in elegance, but in the strength of his presence. Behold, the Ouvidor Street opens as a stage where the ladies of Brazil paraded French adornments and hats as imposing as crowns. Dressed in styles inspired by Empress Josephine, they wished to remain at the height of imperial pomp, despite the ephemeral empire model soon giving way to the persistence of crinolines. In those times of corsets and shawls, the northeastern women adorned themselves with laces and fabrics that told stories of other continents. Rio de Janeiro lived between the modesty of matrons and the splendor of jewels twinkling in the salons, narrating the prosperity of the sugarcane fields and the richness of the cities. Meanwhile, men, under the austere shadow of Dom Pedro II, valued subtlety more than ostentation. The masculine silhouette was defined by the sobriety of a top hat, the dignity of a cane, a pocket watch that marked the progress's rhythm with every timely second. Yet, fashion revealed more than just fabrics and trends. It was the reflection of a society in transformation, whose luxury and desire for colorful adornments were not limited to the elite. Feather decorations, inspired by the country's exotic avifauna, became an emblem of cultural identity in the skilled hands of Brazilian artisans. From Ouvidor Street to the rest of the world, the ladies contributed to the boiling pot of an identity still simmering, sending that tropical touch to those in distant lands. The pinnacle of this era came with the Ilha Fiscal Ball, a last waltz of the monarchy 6 days before its end. The brightness of the lights, the twirling of the crinolines, everything was a swan song for an era bidding farewell. The boutiques of fine clothes exhausted their products, the elite paraded their best attire, but not even the finest silk could embellish the announced end of a regime already in the twilight of its existence. Following such a ball, as a destiny already sealed, the dynamics of the powerful Brazilian monarchy would meet with the inevitable fate that history had reserved for it. The social life in Brazil, with its vivacious rhythm, its colors and luxuries, was about to be swallowed by the maelstrom of a new cycle. After the fireworks of the Ilha Fiscal Ball faded in the sky, an unsettling quietude took over the aristocracy. The dust from noble carriages still lingered in the air when whispers of a republican movement began to weave the path of impending changes. Fashion, the spontaneous art of everyday life, gradually shed its imperial rigor to embrace the more liberal air that came with the winds of the Republic. It was not only a way of dressing that ended, but the model of a country. Clothing stores, formerly brimming with ribbons, silks, and feathers, now faced the daunting task of predicting the tastes of an emerging new society. Crinolines were abandoned, just as titles of nobility fell from their collars. As the 19th century bowed out, Brazil watched the parade of more practical fashion, reflecting a society eager to affirm itself before the world, not as a colony or empire, but as a nation. The pragmatism of progress merged with tradition in the lines of each new piece worn by the population, from the humblest to those graced with fortune. Lace shawls and corsets, which once tightened women's waists, slowly made way for models that allowed them greater freedom of movement, reflecting the growing space they began to occupy in society. Men, in turn, traded their frock coats for suits better aligned with function and the tropical climate. In this new Brazil, fashion was not just clothing or adornment. It became an expression of freedom, a symbol of change, a witness to the birth of an era where each citizen became the tailor of their own identity. Colors took on new shades, not just in garments, but in the palette of opportunities and the diversity that began to draw the country's face. And so, as if a fabric being woven, the narrative of Brazil unfolded through countless threads of stories, each one an integral part of the resplendent social mosaic. Fashion, once imported and imposed, now began to spring from the soil itself, watered by a people who had learned to weave their future with hands eager for prosperity and authenticity. This narrative of manners and fashions is not just the portrait of an era of political, economic, and social transformations. It is a window that opens onto the past, a mirror that reflects the human drive for beauty, expression, and, above all else, the eternal longing to remain in vogue in a world in constant change.